Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Tessa Porter never imagined that her marriage to Mariah Copeland, once built on love, trust, and overcoming every odds stacked against them, would come crashing down in the most brutal and unforgiving way possible. But on this fateful day, inside their apartment, the silence that had lingered between them for weeks suddenly exploded into a storm of anger, betrayal, and shattered dreams. Mariah had been desperately trying to hold things together, hoping that the cracks forming in their marriage were temporary, just a rough patch they could weather together. But Tessa, carrying bitterness in her heart, holding resentment she refused to voice until it was too late, finally snapped. With trembling hands clutching a manila envelope, Tessa stormed into the room where Mariah sat waiting, hoping for reconciliation. Instead, what came next would forever alter the course of their relationship and leave Mariah devastated. Without warning, Tessa pulled out the divorce papers and with a sharp, almost violent motion, hurled them at Mariah. The envelope struck her chest before falling to the floor, and as Mariah bent down in stunned silence to pick them up, Tessa uttered three words so offensive, so cutting, that they didn't just bruise Mariah's heart, they tore it wide open in a way no wound could ever truly heal. Those words, venomously spat out, were "You are nothing." And with that, the air in the room shifted, carrying the weight of years of love dismantled in an instant. Mariah, her breath caught in her throat, stared at the woman she had once called her soulmate, the woman she had once believed was her forever, and realized that this moment would haunt her for the rest of her life. The anger radiating from Tessa's body was palpable, like a storm breaking free after months of heavy clouds. Her eyes, usually soft and filled with music, compassion, and devotion, now burned with bitterness and fury. Mariah couldn't understand how they had gotten here. They had survived so much: Tessa's troubled past, secrets and lies, the surrogacy ordeal, trust issues, career struggles, and even family disapproval. Through every storm, they had sworn to each other that their love was unshakable, that nothing could tear them apart. But now, the evidence sat in Mariah's trembling hands, the divorce papers, and the echo of Tessa's cruel words rang louder than any vow they had ever exchanged. "You are nothing." The phrase replayed in Mariah's head like a vicious chant, each repetition cutting deeper. Mariah's lips quivered as she tried to find words, but all that came out was a weak whisper, "Tessa, how could you?" Her voice cracked, laden with disbelief and sorrow, but Tessa only crossed her arms, her body stiff, her jaw set as though she had been rehearsing this moment for weeks. "How could I?" Tessa snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through glass. "How could you, Mariah? How could you think that I would keep living like this, stuck in a marriage where I feel unseen, unheard, unappreciated? I gave up pieces of myself for you, and what do I have to show for it? Nothing. And you're nothing to me now." Each syllable came like a hammer striking a fragile surface, shattering Mariah's soul piece by piece. Mariah's chest heaved, her heart pounding as her eyes welled up with tears she couldn't stop from spilling. She had never seen Tessa like this before, so cold, so detached, so filled with cruelty. Yes, they had fought in the past, yes, they had their fair share of disagreements, but there had always been love underneath the tension, a desperate desire to work things out, to fight for one another. But now, all Mariah saw in Tessa's face was disdain. The divorce papers weren't just a legal document, they were a death sentence to everything they had built together. Mariah's mind spun as memories flooded back, late-night talks, quiet mornings in bed, their wedding vows, the day they moved in together, the little moments of joy that had once defined their love. How could all of that be erased so quickly, so mercilessly? She clutched the papers to her chest as if holding on to them could somehow change the outcome, could somehow undo the words that had already been spoken. But nothing could undo it. Nothing could erase the cruelty of "You are nothing." Tessa turned away, pacing the room as if her emotions were too overwhelming to keep still. She ran her fingers through her hair in frustration, muttering under her breath words Mariah couldn't make out. The silence between them was now deafening, filled with all the words they hadn't said over the past months, all the wounds they had ignored, all the resentment that had been allowed to fester. Mariah finally found the strength to stand, her hands shaking as she held the papers out toward Tessa. "You don't mean this," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "You're angry, you're hurt, but you don't mean it. You can't just throw everything we've built away. We've survived too much together for this to be the end. Tessa, please." But Tessa whipped around, her eyes blazing, her tone merciless. "Stop begging, Mariah. It's pathetic. Do you know how long I've wanted to say those words to you? How long I've wanted to scream that you were nothing to me? I meant every word. Don't you dare try to turn this around and make me feel guilty for finally saying what I've been holding inside." The venom in her voice was unbearable, the pain in her words undeniable. Mariah staggered back as if she had been struck physically, her knees nearly giving out from the weight of Tessa's cruelty. For years, Mariah had struggled with feelings of inadequacy, of not being enough, of always living in the shadow of others. From her complicated childhood, her tumultuous relationship with Sharon, to her constant need to prove herself, Mariah had worked so hard to believe she was worthy of love. Tessa had been the one person who had always reassured her, the one person who had made her feel like she mattered. But now, those very assurances were shattered, replaced by a declaration of worthlessness. It was as though every insecurity Mariah had ever carried was suddenly validated in the most painful way possible. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "You promised me forever, Tessa. You promised me I was enough. Was that all a lie?" Tessa's expression softened for the briefest moment, a flicker of guilt flashing in her eyes, but just as quickly it was gone, replaced by a hardened mask. "Forever doesn't exist. Mariah. Not with you. Not anymore." The room felt colder, the distance between them wider than ever before. Mariah sank onto the couch, her body trembling as she clutched the divorce papers, the ink on them blurring as her tears fell. She couldn't process it, she didn't want to process it. This wasn't how their story was supposed to end. They were supposed to be the couple that defied the odds, that proved love could conquer anything. But love had been replaced with anger, with resentment, with 3 cruel words that would echo in Mariah's mind forever: "You are nothing." Tessa stood at the door, her hand on the knob, not even glancing back as she prepared to walk out of Mariah's life for good. "Sign them," she ordered coldly. "And don't drag this out. The sooner it's over, the better." And with that, she walked out, leaving Mariah alone with her shattered heart, her broken dreams, and the unbearable weight of rejection. The door slammed behind Tessa, and the echo of it reverberated through the apartment like a final verdict, sealing the fate of a love story that once inspired so many. Mariah sat frozen on the couch, clutching the divorce papers against her chest as if holding them could somehow glue the pieces of her broken life back together. Her chest rose and fell rapidly, her breaths uneven, shallow, desperate. She felt like the walls were closing in around her, each second suffocating her further. The sting of Tessa's words lingered like acid in her ears: "You are nothing." Mariah had endured many blows in her life, betrayal, abandonment, lies, even her own missteps, but this cut deeper than anything else. To hear those words from the one person she thought would stand by her side through everything was a cruelty beyond comprehension. She wanted to scream, to chase after Tessa, to demand answers, but her body refused to move. She was paralyzed, trapped between disbelief and heartbreak. For hours, Mariah sat there, the clock ticking louder than ever before, each minute a reminder that her world had collapsed in an instant. Her mind was a whirlwind of memories, Tessa singing softly to her in bed, the way they had laughed together over burnt dinners, their wedding vows where they had promised to fight for each other no matter what. She remembered the feel of Tessa's hand in hers, steady and strong, and the way they had clung to one another during the darkest moments. How could all of that dissolve into nothingness? How could Tessa dismiss their entire history with 3 words? Mariah's tears fell faster, burning trails down her cheeks, soaking the divorce papers she still held tightly. The ink blurred, smudged by her tears, as though even the words on the page didn't want to bear witness to this destruction. Eventually, the silence grew unbearable. Mariah stood on shaky legs and paced the room, whispering to herself like someone trying to convince her own heart to keep beating. she doesn't mean it. She can't mean it. She's angry. She's lashing out. This isn't Tessa. This isn't my wife. But deep down, a small, cruel voice whispered the opposite. She meant every word. She wanted to hurt you, and she succeeded. Mariah pressed her hands against her ears as if she could drown out that voice, but the truth gnawed at her relentlessly. The person she loved most had just reduced her to nothing. The next morning, Sharon arrived unexpectedly, sensing something was wrong with her daughter. As soon as she walked into the apartment, Sharon's heart sank. The room was a mess, pillows scattered, empty glasses on the table, the divorce papers lying in a crumpled heap on the floor. But more alarming than the chaos was Mariah herself, sitting on the floor with her back against the couch, eyes red and swollen, face pale, and body trembling. Sharon rushed to her side, kneeling down. "Mariah, honey, what happened?" she asked gently, brushing strands of hair from her daughter's tear-stained face. At first, Mariah couldn't speak, the lump in her throat too heavy, but eventually, the words tumbled out, raw and broken. "She left me, Mom. Tessa, she threw the divorce papers at me, and she said I was nothing." Sharon's eyes widened, her own heart breaking for her daughter. Anger flashed across her face as she pulled Mariah into a protective embrace. "No, sweetheart. No one gets to say that to you. You are not nothing. You are everything. You are strong, you are kind, you are my daughter, and you matter more than words could ever describe." Sharon's voice was fierce, but her own hands trembled as she held Mariah. She knew her daughter's history, her deep-seated fears of abandonment, her struggles with self-worth. To have the person she trusted most attack her in that vulnerable place was devastating. Sharon wanted to storm out and find Tessa, to confront her, to demand how she could destroy Mariah so cruelly. But for now, her daughter needed comfort more than confrontation. Mariah sobbed into her mother's shoulder, shaking violently as Sharon rocked her gently, whispering soothing words. "I don't understand, Mom," Mariah choked out between sobs. "We've been through so much. We fought for our love. We promised each other forever. How could she just throw it all away? How could she say that to me?" Sharon held her tighter, closing her eyes as tears of her own slipped down her cheeks. Sometimes people lash out when they're hurting inside. Sometimes they project their own pain onto the ones they love most. But what Tessa said doesn't define you, Mariah. It only defines her cruelty in that moment. Sharon's words were kind, but Mariah could barely absorb them. The wound was too fresh, too deep. Meanwhile, across town, Tessa sat alone in a hotel room, her guitar resting untouched in the corner, the divorce still fresh on her tongue. She replayed the moment over and over, the fury in her voice, the look on Mariah's face, the way the papers had hit her chest before fluttering to the floor. For a brief moment, satisfaction had surged through her, like she had finally released years of pent-up resentment. But now, in the silence of the room, guilt began to creep in. Her hands trembled as she held her head in them, the words echoing back to her, "You are nothing." At the time, they had felt powerful, liberating, like a final release. But now, they sounded ugly, cruel, unforgivable. She had wanted to wound Mariah, yes, but had she gone too far? The image of Mariah's devastated face haunted her, making sleep impossible, food tasteless, music unbearable. And yet, pride kept Tessa from turning back. She told herself that the marriage was already over, that her words had only solidified what was inevitable. She paced the hotel room, muttering to herself, "She never really saw me. She never really understood me. I gave everything and got nothing in return. I had to do it. I had to end it." But deep down, she knew she had chosen the cruelest way possible. It wasn't just about ending the marriage, it was about inflicting maximum pain, about making Mariah feel the emptiness she herself had been feeling. Back at the apartment, Sharon refused to leave Mariah's side. She made tea, coaxed her daughter to eat something, and sat with her through the endless waves of tears. At one point, Mariah whispered, "Maybe she's right. Maybe I am nothing." Sharon's heart broke all over again as she pulled Mariah's face toward hers. "Don't you ever say that. Don't you ever believe that. Tessa may have said those words, but they're a lie. You are so much more than she could ever see right now. But Mariah struggled to believe her mother. Every insecurity she had buried over the years was now resurfacing with a vengeance. The rejection felt absolute, final, like a confirmation of her deepest fears. Word began to spread quickly among their circle of friends. Devin heard first when Sharon confided in him, and soon Abby, Noah, and even Kyle knew. Everyone had their own reaction: shock, anger, sadness. Some were furious with Tessa, ready to condemn her for the cruelty of her words. Others wondered what had pushed her to such a breaking point. But no one doubted the devastation it had caused Mariah. Devin stopped by to check on her, offering support, reminding her that she had a family around her, but Mariah struggled to even look at him. "I don't want anyone's pity," she snapped through tears. "I just want my wife back." As days passed, Mariah tried to hold herself together, showing up for work at society, putting on a brave face, but those who knew her best saw through the act. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes, her laughter was hollow, her body tense as if bracing for another blow. Every corner of the town reminded her of Tessa, the places they had gone together, the songs she had heard her sing, the memories that now felt poisoned. Nights were the hardest, when the silence of their bed echoed louder than any sound, when Mariah reached out instinctively to the other side only to find it cold and empty. Tessa, too, struggled with her decision. She threw herself into music, pouring her turmoil into lyrics and melodies, but even the music felt hollow. Every song she wrote seemed to circle back to Mariah, to the love she had destroyed, to the pain she had inflicted. She told herself she had been right to end things, that she couldn't stay in a marriage that suffocated her, but the guilt gnawed at her relentlessly. When she closed her eyes at night, she saw Mariah's face in that moment, broken, devastated, lost. And no matter how much she tried to block it out, she couldn't shake the weight of what she had done. Sharon eventually confronted Tessa, tracking her down at the hotel. She didn't mince words. "How dare you say something like that to my daughter? You knew her past, her struggles, her insecurities, and you used them against her in the cruelest way possible. You didn't just end a marriage, Tessa, you tried to destroy her." Tessa sat silently, unable to meet Sharon's furious gaze. For once, her sharp tongue failed her. The guilt was too heavy. Sharon leaned in closer, her voice low and dangerous. "You may think you've won something by saying those words, but all you've proven is that you're a coward. Because only a coward tears down the person they once claimed to love." Sharon left without waiting for a response, leaving Tessa to sit in the silence of her own shame. But as much as Sharon's words stung, they also planted a seed of doubt in Tessa's mind. Had she really ended things because she was unhappy, or had she lashed out because she was afraid? Afraid of being vulnerable, of admitting that she felt unworthy, of facing the possibility that love might actually last if she fought for it? The questions haunted her, and for the first time, she began to wonder if the words she had spat at Mariah weren't just offensive, they were a mask for her own self-loathing. Mariah, meanwhile, faced a difficult choice. Would she let Tessa's words define her, or would she rise above them? Sharon encouraged her to focus on herself, to heal, to remember her worth, but healing felt impossible when every beat of her heart still longed for the woman who had broken it. Nights were spent tossing and turning, imagining scenarios where Tessa came back, apologized, begged for forgiveness. Days were spent pretending she was strong while secretly breaking apart inside. But deep down, Mariah knew something had changed forever. Even if Tessa came back, even if she apologized, the scar would always remain. Because nothing could ever erase the moment she was told she was nothing. And yet, fate has a way of forcing confrontations. Just as Mariah began to piece herself back together, circumstances would arise that brought her and Tessa face to face once again. The question wasn't just whether their marriage could survive, but whether Mariah could ever forgive the unforgivable. The days that followed became a blur for Mariah, who moved through them like a ghost. At society, she took orders with a hollow smile plastered on her face, but customers could see the sadness in her eyes. Abby gently asked her if she wanted time off, but Mariah shook her head fiercely. If I sit alone in that apartment, I'll go insane, she admitted. I'd rather drown myself in work than in silence. Still, no matter how many plates she carried or how many customers she chatted with, every pause in her day brought the memory of Tessa's voice crashing back. You are nothing. Those words clung to her like a curse, echoing in her head in the quiet moments, poisoning her self-esteem, threatening to undo years of personal growth. Sharon kept a close eye on her daughter, inviting her for coffee, for long walks, even offering for Mariah to stay at the cottage for a while. But Mariah resisted. That's our place, Mom, she said with a brittle edge. Every room, every chair, every blanket, it reminds me of her. It's like the walls are laughing at me, telling me she's gone. Sharon's heart ached as she listened, but she never pushed too hard. She knew grief couldn't be rushed, healing had to come on its own timeline. Still, she remained vigilant, worried about how deeply those 3 words had burrowed into her daughter's psyche.